So if you watch my videos regularly, you'll know that it's been a fairly busy May for me and I'm in need of a rest, but you'll also know that I love planting stuff. And so today kind of is a nice combination of the end of planting for May and all the way through probably until the middle of June now. And it's also a big planting day. So I'm going to show you what I'm up to. So first I'll just show you some of the little things. So I've been interplanting these lettuces in between the leeks in the polytunnel, and yeah, these are all crazy little experiments that I'm running to see what grows well and what doesn't in the polytunnel. I put some little beetroot in here, and I'm going to interplant those with spring onions, and I'm going to have some basil down here, and maybe a little bit of spinach. So lots of little bits and pieces going in. So I've got 3 beds of parsnips, and I've just weeded this one because now it's possible for me to tell the difference between the parsnip seeds and the weeds. So I'm pretty pleased. Pretty good germination in this bed. In fact, I think every station bar 1 so far has got at least 1 parsnip seedling coming up, so I'll just thin these out in a few weeks time. And of course they're, as you can see, all interplanted with onions. So I've managed to scavenge some containers. This is an old water butt. I don't really know what this is, but I cut it in half. So first in go some little courgettes, and these haven't been hardened off, so I just pop them inside these little bubble wrap tents, make a hole with an empty plant pot, then just drop the plant into the hole so there's no root disturbance at all. Give them a bit of a watering. These bubble wrap tents are just made with these fence pins, just bent into the centre and clipped, and the details of all these bits and pieces you can find in the growing undercover section of my ebook, which I'll link in the description below. So now I'm putting Brussels sprouts in. I am putting them fairly close together, closer than I would normally do, but it's just a case of not having very much space for sprouts this year, and trying to get as many in as I can. Of course they're going to get this whole row, and as always I just water the holes with seaweed and fish mix, and I've put just a pinch, not much, of nitrogen fertilizer in here. This is hoof and horn, so you'll give them a really slow release of nitrogen. I do want these to be really big plants. You know, the bigger the better, of course, with Brussels sprouts. So that's those, and down the edges I'm going to put leeks and just hope the sprouts don't kind of overwhelm them. I've had good experience with this before, so it does seem to work okay. Down here I've planted fill basket, and here I'm putting red ball. And when you're doing these, you do want to just obviously take off all these lower leaves like that, just so you get a good bit of stem in the hole. It's a nice deep hole. Just pop it down like that. Basically you want the soil up to this lower leaf here, and it's not so much that you actually get roots growing from the stem. I've never seen that, but what you do get is a nice sturdy plant when you do that, with lots of stem to support it in the ground. And you do need to kind of check the underside of these leaves kind of fairly meticulously for caterpillars, eggs and all of that, especially if you're going to put them under nets, because once they're under those nets you're not going to be able to see what's going on. So let's take some leaves off that one. That in there. Some of these are a little bit deep. I just won't backfill completely with soil for those. There you can see, I've just made little depressions there. which will aid with watering. And as the plants grow, of course, you can backfill that with soil if you want. You see the leeks that I've got in here. These are again just pushed in. They're planted about 4 inches down, so a little bit deeper than the modules. But I know some people like to put them in like 9 inches down, but the trouble is with that, when you're interplanting, they're just really difficult to get out, and you end up having to kind of get a fork in and ease them out, especially if the ground's frosty. And obviously that's not good for your sprouts, so it's better, I think, just to put them in deep enough so you get a little bit of nice white shank, but not so deep that they're difficult to get out. And generally I find I can just pull these out without having to dig at all. So that is that bed planted. Now we'll be taking these onions out sometime in the next month, and I shall put more sprouts and leeks in when I do that. So the net I'm going to be using is this one that's currently over the onions. It's not a particularly fine net, but it's fine enough that obviously it'll keep birds off and butterflies, but it's also just fine enough that it gives a little bit of protection from the wind. And since those sprouts haven't been hardened off, just that little bit of protection is still quite useful for them. So there we go, details on all the nets that I use and all the fence pins and the eye savers and all that sort of thing. More videos on how I put the nets up are in the little ebook that's linked in the description below. So let's take a quick look at these onions. Bed needs a little bit of weeding, but apart from that, they're all looking really good. These are all the ones from seed, which are growing much nicer than the ones from sets. I don't think the sets liked all the cold weather that we had in April, whereas the ones from seeds just seemed to throw that off and grew really well. So these were planted end of March, so they're looking pretty good actually for this time of year. Maybe slightly smaller than last year, but still pretty nice. I don't dig any of my beds, and I always give them a good mulch of compost every year. I like to keep it nice and fluffy like this, so that it really retains the water really well. I think if you compress it down, it's not so good. You can see how crumbly, kind of partially composted this stuff is. It's perfect as a mulch. And just in case you think I live in a weed-free paradise like some gardeners, I'm afraid I don't. So there we go. Unfortunately the net wasn't quite the right size, so I just had to join it, but these trusty clips to the rescue. So now I'm going to do this New Zealand spinach. It's looking quite nice, and we don't have a huge amount of spinach now, so I do want to get this in as quickly as possible. It does better in the ground, and I've just made this from an old water butt. Drilled about 20 holes in the bottom, and what I'm going to do for these, because they've not been hardened off, is again I'm just going to use bubble wrap, but I'm just going to lie it over the top of the plants, making kind of like a coal frame. There we go, just a little bit of ventilation at both ends, and that will be fine. I'll take that off in about a week, 10 days, something like that. So the primary crop in this bed is the peas. I've got loads of peas on here now, so this is brilliant, because these are a mix of sugar snaps and mange too. So I've been snacking on these today. But the secondary crop here are shallots, and mostly these are just 1 or 2 shallots, and so there's loads of space between them. And so I'm going to fill all that space with these spring onions, and the variety I've chosen here is North Holland Blood Red, and these will bulb up and be a main crop onion as well. Now they won't be very big as a main crop onion, but if I happen to have too many spring onions, then at least I'll get a bit of a bonus crop, provided I thin them down to 1 or 2 onions per space. So that looks a lot better, albeit a bit floppy. So now I'm planting sweetcorn and crown prince squash. So these are incredible, and they're about, what are they? Yeah, 4 weeks old. I quite like sowing them in these modules. They're really easy to get out and really easy to plant, much easier than root trainers, and they seem to get away just fine, so never had an issue with these. I found with root trainers sometimes a young plant is more difficult to get out of the root trainer, so you have to leave them until they're sort of 6 or 7 weeks old perhaps, and sweet corn really like to be transplanted young, so I think little modules are the way to go, for me at least. And this bed is, now I've planted it, incredibly densely planted, so I should have left much more space. I should only have 3 of these crown prints in here, but well, who knows what's going to happen, we'll find out. And again, the sweet corn, maybe that's about the right density, but if I'd planted them with more space between the crown prints, that would have been better. Anyway, that's what I'll do in the next bed. I'll only plant 3 per bed rather than the 4 that I've got in here. And it's still a little bit cold for both sweet corn and squash, so I just popped that little net on over the top of that fleece, so that should keep them nice and cozy. And I'll take that whole thing off probably in about 2, maybe 3 weeks time. And that netted frame was over this calabrese, which really needs picking, but we've got so much of it, it's hard to get through it all. And these sprout leaves, and again these are just going to be finished next week, and then this bed's going to all be replanted with carrots. So I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve, this is Seaside. Oh dear. So I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve Richards, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.